then we're kind of, the horse is bought before the cart's come out for the horse. So I'm wondering how the town council can start to be proactive in terms of looking at the environmental consequences of the development of flora and fauna and the biodiversity of the valley. And it come back to the question over here, which was about looking for researchers up country, whereas here in Cornwall, I maybe mentioned it somewhere here. Only today, 1 second, that we have in Cornwall, Cornwall Environmental Consultants in Truro. We have at Exeter University an Environmental Sustainability Institute. We have expertise on our doorstep, which we could draw in to actually be proactive in terms of what biodiversity exists in College Valley, and therefore that's an added case.
How should we pay for this proposal?
Sorry?
How should we pay for the study?
We don't know if they're going to. We don't know what the costs are, and whether, for example, the Universities Institute do it as part of their research element for their students. So it doesn't necessarily have a cost implication, I'm suggesting, but someone needs to take the initiative rather than reacting to the planning application. We could be active in advance of that.
You've got to be quick before they cut any more hedges or
bluebells
or whatever the next plan is. Yeah, got to be quick.
Indeed.
Thank you for your question. Chris?
Yes, I think I've been prompted to answer. Protest groups, or not protest groups, people with concerns such as yours generally, the ones that win out towards the end, they club together, they have one voice, they're not lots of disparate groups coming to the council with slightly different opinions, because once some of you say, I have actually heard during this, some sides want more housing as proposed, some want about the same, others, some groups want no housing. That won't work in the planning inquiry or when the inspectorate looks at it. What you need is one voice. Once you've got one voice, you've got to get the cash together really to be serious about this. You need a planning barrister that can go head to head with the developer's planning barrister, because once it goes to public inquiry, none of us in this room would be slaughtered at it, not fairly. The emotion, the lady said the emotion's right, I can understand that, but when you get into a planning scenario where you've got someone from London who's sort of making a judgment over everything, it's got to be fact, precedent and so forth. So you need a figurehead. And the problem is, obviously, you've got a month to sort all this out. Now, coming back to local consultants, yes, there's a lot of local expertise. Councils tend not to use them because of you get accusations from the other side that they're not as independent as they should be. That so and so lives about 5 miles from the valley or whatever.
Not as independent as Walker's own research.
Yeah. You see, he'll be tested, but he'll be tested by the county council's own consultants, and they'll probably be sort of Cheltenham or something, or it'll be done in-house with them. It's like a firewall between them. So my working days I suffered with that. I saw lots of good architectural jobs in Cornwall go over the Tamar, which we just couldn't get through the glass ceiling because we were local. Maritime Museum, well, I was told my submission was ripped up on day one because they wanted an architect of international repute. I got that from the jury. So these things are difficult. But you really need somebody to speak on your behalf who knows how they're speaking. So I don't know, wrong answer, sorry.
Right. Next question, Robin, Faith.
Yes. I just wanted to sort of say a bit about how I think that I agree with some of what you said about how local planning issues, like the local town council has very little control over the choices which are made, and actually in turn the county council has doesn't have an awful lot of choice about it either. A lot of it comes from central government edict. But what I would say is that in response to that, and the lack of the community's lack of ability to have any say, real meaningful say of what gets built in its own town, what we need is our town councillors to fight back. And I think that one of the ways you can do that is not so much in terms of making a decision to reverse your previous decision, but throwing both of them out, because frankly I think having 200 houses in any one particular place is a big problem. We should be looking at alternatives to that, and that if we throw out both the options, then it may not have an effect in the long term. It may buy us a little bit of breathing space in order to come up with the town plan.
What size would you like to think we should be looking at? If 200.
That's not for me to say.
No,
That's
what,
not for
you
you to
tell us
say.
to throw it out. So what do you think we should be looking at?
Equivalent to
I think that it should be subject to a local debate, is what I think.
Yeah.
So how do we, I mean, they can give us 40%, let's hope they give us 40% affordable housing because of spec.
Well, this is my point, you see. You say, like, well, we hope they'll give us 40%. My point is, what we need you to do is to fight on our behalf to get what we want. And part of that process is to find out what we want, and that's a town plan. So,
Next question is Rich
Can I
Mitchell.
respond to the question?
We're going to debate it. We raise and we will have a debate
will
at the next
it
meeting.
be put onto the agenda for the next council meeting?
If the two signatures go forward, it'll be an item on the meeting.
I think you talked about a neighbourhood plan there when you said...
It's not town plan, is it?
Well, the
Neighbourhood
first,
plan.
it seems to be the
Do you
first
mean
thing
a
to do
neighbourhood
is that
plan?
have to take that decision to reverse the decision. So that needs to go onto the agenda. So I suppose the first question is, will that be on the agenda?
Yes.
And then secondly, will the proposal to start the wheels in motion towards the town plan also be on the agenda?
That's been implied.
If I receive the written motion, it will be on the agenda.
Neighbourhood plan, sorry.
Yeah. We have a town plan already.
The neighbourhood plan.
Yeah. It's not something you write on the back of an envelope. It's a big piece
I
of
understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, but I mean that's where we need to start, isn't it? It
Perhaps you'd like
seems
to
to
be
me, from
involved
listening
in
to everything that's been said.
Look at it, eh? Yeah. Right. We need to move on.
Sorry, so will those be on the agenda?
Would you
We
like
will
to be involved, I think she said.
No, my
We'll be
question was, will
discussing
those
it.
be on the agenda?
If we get the written motion on to revoke the decision, that will be on the agenda. And as far as the neighbourhood plan goes, yes, we can put that on the next meeting. I mean, initially,
It's not going to help
we
us
need
at
to be
this
clear
point,
what
is it?
decision the council's taking at that meeting. It's a long process, but they can take a decision to start the process. We can certainly.
Mary?
Some 3 years ago, when the town framework started, Penryn Town Council, along with Falmouth Council, were told we did not need a neighbourhood plan. Am I right? Am I right? The two Matts? Some 3 years ago, when Chris sat round the table, the rest of us didn't, we were told, Falmouth and Penryn Town Councils were told, that we did not need a neighbourhood plan. Okay, we took that advice at the time. The gentlemen are in the room now, when that advice was given to us. And I have since asked if we still need a neighbourhood plan. These discussions went on before Christmas. If we needed a neighbourhood plan, and we were told that an allocation document could be attached to the town framework plan, because part of the town framework in 2012 that you all missed was consulted on anyway. So Truro, as you know, only started theirs 18 months, coming on 2 years ago. It still hasn't been adopted. Still hasn't been adopted. So that's where we sit with the neighbourhood plan. Now, I just want to defend this council at the minute while I'm on my feet, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Well, hang on a second. because I'm
Glasney
not actually criticising
Valley,
you.
Glasney Valley, you're saying that the gentleman over there said, what Penryn Council done about Glasney Valley? But Vicky Bennett, who was mayor at the time, opened up the BMX track down there. £100,000 came from a department within Cornwall Council to make that BMX track for our kids down in Glasney Valley. Prior to Vicky's time, a councillor called Len Brokenshire got a group of probation kids down there, and they cleaned up the valley, tidied up the valley, cut down trees. In Kevin Paul's time, our ex-town clerk, we took over what they call the doorstep green, where another 50 or 60,000 pounds was spent. So we have done stuff down in the valley. We did ask the residents of Penryn and the schools to join in with us then. They didn't. Now, somebody said, just a minute, somebody said about their grandchild down in the valley. I've been down with my grandchild in the valley, and we've picked up litter. My grandchild was that much from a needle down in the valley. There's another Glasney group down there now that are cleaning up the valley. It's the community that are bringing the valley to its state that it is at present. If we have this development, and this development would have come in irrespective of a neighbourhood plan, of a development plan, of an allocation plan, of a town plan. And what other plan sits on our shelf in the town council? The O'Rourke plan, the Evans plan, the Hearn plan, and the community plan. Now I can see Michael Moore sitting up in West Street, hour after hour, about the community plan. Am I right, Chris?
That's correct. Yes.
And nobody came through that door to put any incentive into that plan. Okay, Richard Walker. Richard Walker, I've been on the council almost 25 years, and I had a break for 4, and previous to that was on it another 4. So nearly 30 years of my life. And in that 30 years, Richard Walker has come to the town council possibly half a dozen times. Ted Wilkes will know that. Now, he's come with the application at Kernick in the Wall Garden. He's come with College Farm. And now, 9 years ago, he came with a master plan of Glasney Valley leading right up to Asda. We threw him out then, and we threw him out at every stage that he came into our council. Unfortunately, some of the councillors are not here now, but they would tell you the same that I'm telling you now. In the interim, policies changed, and each time he's put in an application now, he's got it, because policy changes. Okay. Councillors on this table have had a little planning training. The 2 councillors that get elected on the 20, whatever it is, of March or April, they will have a little planning training, but it is a little. I'm Cornwall councillor, as is my colleague in the front here, Tony Martin. We've had planning training. If the allocation document didn't come to bite us on the 5th of January, Walker would have still put in his application. And he still will, even if, and I'm not saying we're going to chuck it out, even if it gets chucked out on our meeting in March, okay? St Ives have had a DPT document that they were going to adopt, and I believe they chucked it out. But part of it was identified. And because that part was identified, an application was put in on Carbis Bay for 235 houses. It got chucked out, but it's on its way to an appeal. Now, I've sat on 3 appeals. One of them was at Strawberry Fields. And I was made to look silly. I fought for my town. We were also made to look silly over at the station. We've been made to look silly up at West End. You know, we will fight for our town, but when you have policies that are there, that are robust, what can you do? When you have planning training, you know, when you have training out there for a job, you have to use your tools, unfortunately. Or you go and you get shot down with a barrister from London, and he will make me look silly The town council that I represent looks silly, but even more so, the people of Penryn. So when that fait accompli was put before us on the 5th of January, it was out of the blue. It was out of the blue. And you really think we put our hands up, you know, without thinking what we were doing and with a heavy heart? Because I, for one, did, and I know the rest of us that put our hands up, did it with a very heavy heart.
You shouldn't have done it.
I'm speaking, excuse me. You want to speak? Put your name down. Put your name down.
You don't speak to me like that.
Put your name down is all I'm saying.
No, it was the attitude you said it in.
So, we do it with a heavy heart.
I think it's not a personal thing.
It's seven sites were allocated in and around Penryn. They did their homework, we did ours by identifying them. A lot of us have had sleepless nights. I've been up to Strawberry Fields, the next field on. You know, can that take 200 dwellings? It can't, unfortunately. It can't.
So my question was,
Taking it personally, it's not personally. And maybe people knew about it.
my question was, you know, and I've listened to what you said, Mary, and I do appreciate the work that the town council does, and I said that before I asked my question. So, you know, to take it as some kind of criticism, please don't, because it isn't meant in that regard at all. But my question was purely, like, will the town council put it on their agenda at their next meeting to try to put as much of that spanner in the works as it possibly can? That's my question.
We haven't made. We've got to make a decision first. Again, we've got to look at the decision. So we may decide to try and put a spanner in. We may not.
Can I just have a sorry, so can I just quickly make a comment to you on that? The two things about the neighbourhood plan. Actually, we did, not from the town council, but I with my community plan hat on. I was working with Mike Jenks in Falmouth, that would be a chair of the Civic Society, to do a joint plan for Falmouth and Penryn. Reason being, it would cut the costs for both communities for the ratepayer, and it would speed it up too. Unfortunately, that went Fairway, but Falmouth then decided overnight not to do anything with us, and they did a very tight plan around their town centre to deal with their Article 4 student housing problem, and they completely turned their back on the housing problems. The only other thing I've got to say, and this is not being adversarial, if you think a neighbourhood plan can stop development, that's not the case. It cannot overturn local plan policies which are on the next tier up and override it.
But it can slow down the process and give us time to organise ourselves.
What you don't want to do is slow down the process, because all the time you're slowing down the process. We've slowed it down for 5 years. You've got developers all over Cornwall leaping in with schemes everywhere because they're working on the basis of a presumption to approve planning, unless there's an area of outstanding natural beauty next door, or it's not sustainable. And we've got to get our local plan in place, because once the local plan in place, that then replaces the protection we used to have from the planning acts that were ripped up.
We must move on.
We need to lobby our MP, don't we?
Yeah. Next question from Mitchell.
Yeah, I've already had my technical question asked, so I've just got down a few little notes. First of all, Penryn's full of creative, independent, pretty strong-willed people, as you've seen tonight. I think it's quite important to forget about what's happened in the past, whether it's the council decision to prioritise anything, or 3 years ago when people here who weren't aware didn't turn up. So that's neither here nor there. There's no point looking backwards. I think it's really important, also, Mark Snowden, that you do have to think emotionally about things. Because ultimately, at some point, we're going to be lying on our backwards and saying, that did happen, and we let it happen. So it is important. Whether we can stop it or not, the important thing is to try and stop it.
Yeah.
And, what's really nice is seeing that you are, because we weren't aware of the town council and how they felt, and probably up until a couple of weeks ago weren't aware of how Penryn felt as a whole community. So it's nice to stand up here and see people saying how strongly, see how strongly you feel as councillors about that land being lost. So that's really encouraging. If we don't fight together, If we don't stand up here today and our questions aren't answered clearly and concisely, and so which is why I think it's a very good question to say who will stand up and try and oppose this, who would like to revoke it. It wasn't trying to catch you out. What we're trying to do is fight this proposal. We're trying to make sure it doesn't happen. There's no need for conflict within this room. We live in the same town. What we're asking you to do is side with us. That's one point. The second is kind of lent on, came on from Martha Tilston really, and this is the emotional side of things, and it might be something that we can disregard at the moment, but it's the same. You've got Louis here in the room, and I think his comments were rather glossed over. It is important. We're talking about the next generation. I said this at the first meeting. I've got a daughter who's 1 year old. It's not whether the land is privately owned or publicly owned. It doesn't even matter whether we have access to that land or not, even though it's possible that we do because the footpath's been used for more than 20 years. That's not the issue either. The land there, it's something we can see. It's something that the town can feel. Therefore, it's extremely important not to lose. And the other thing is, it's our last bit of land, more or less. We've got these are the 2 bits of land we've got left. Now, I'm sure you've all heard about the tribes in Easter Island. I can't remember how many they went from, but it was maybe 10, 20, 30,000 people, landing up at about 100 people. This might sound like a digression, it isn't. Ultimately, they got rid of what they really needed, which was land and trees. And as a population, they went downhill. That's exactly what's happening on a larger but slower and less obvious scale right now. If we don't keep hold of the land, which is extremely important in its own right, and at the moment is always found guilty until proved innocent, that is, it will be developed unless we can prove that it shouldn't be developed and not the other way around. So against the whole British law system, we will lose it. We don't want to lose that. Us as a town do not want to lose that. You, I'd imagine, as councillors, do not want to lose that. You as Cornwall Council, you know why Cornwall is a beautiful, much loved place. You can't afford to lose it. Just because we're getting information down from the central government about this policy doesn't mean it's right. I've always been taught to challenge everything. It doesn't matter who says it. No one. You can only earn respect. You can't just come into a room and be respected. If it's not right, we challenge it. So I'm asking you as well, Cornwall Council, to help us on our case. It's not a question of either this piece of land or that piece of land. In this case, it's neither nor. We don't want to lose either of those pieces of land. They're equally important. I, for one, and I hope others, will stand up. I'll say till the death, it sounds ridiculous, but I will. I will stand here until the very time when the diggers or whoever cut me away from those fields, because that's how important it is to me, my family, my daughter, and I'd imagine a lot of people in this room. I want you all to fight with us, not against us. Hooray!
Next question is from Norma Bouvier.
No, thank you. The question's been asked.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Next question is from Rosemary Minns.
Oh, right. Thank you. No questions.
Okay. Right, Mr. Daniels, the floor is yours.
Yes. It's really just put it to the council. I'm from up country, but I've been coming down here 60 years. I'm 71 years old. And I thought, I love Cornwall, I love voting, so I came here to live. I've always been a country boy, lived in various places. I've even lived in America with my sister, so I've seen over there. I've lived in France a while, lived in Lancashire, but mainly in my place of birth, Worcestershire and Warwickshire. I haven't opposed or gone on councils, but I've listened to what happened, I've seen what's happening in the villages. I think why we're a bit angry tonight, because normally, irrespective of the issues, the town council at least, or the council that are following the people, show their support, but tell them what the problems are. And I think both sides, because I've been told by knowledgeable people that there has been apathy, people are busy going about their lives, they haven't come into the situation, and therefore things you've got to do something, so you pass it. What I wrote tonight is that I'll just read this. It's really just making me think, because this booklet, the reason I came to Cornwall, and I've seen a lot of places, and it's still a beautiful place, and you advertise it as a beautiful place, but I mean, it is being destroyed, and it's not obviously not your fault, but surely there are things that can be done to limit the damage limitation. But if I read this first, and I'd just like to ask, I wasn't going to ask questions, but I'd just like to ask you where we go from this. I'm wishing to address you. As must be aware, Penryn was an important port going back to the 12th century, and an important historical town. I mean, it's got special things here, hasn't it? I mean, there's lots of nice towns, old towns, but this has got the glistening history. Unfortunately got lost by whoever knocked it down, and then all the stuff got pinched. But at least some of the buildings have been built in it. So I live in the old park down in Bow Hill, and when I got the place there, I was staggered. I thought, beautiful. 4 people turned it down, and I got the chance. Oh, would you want this? Yes. And it's lovely. I walked my dog. I didn't have a car for a long while. I've got an old car now, but I've only driven 3,500 miles in 5 years I've been here. So I do a lot of walking, 8-10 miles a day, all over these fields. This is the first time, 2 weeks ago, I've stopped walking across what I thought was a path which is marked. Very old people who are born here told me, been used by the Celts millennium, when this was all trees. Right away, Jusina Park was all trees and a stream. They walked across from there to Penryn, and I thought, fine. The guy stopped me, said, I can't walk that, and I said, well, I'm being told it is, there's a track here. I didn't argue with him, I turned around and went back. And the reason I got angry tonight is because, although it isn't on some other stuff, the map that is out from the council, which shows the planning area, there are 2 pathways marked on there. Not the track that I got chucked off, but they go up by the little forest there that goes up to Penryn bypass, and they come down again along the hedgerow. There's a little plot of land at the bottom with some sort of shack on it and a couple of cars, and the walk starts off somewhere there, whereas previously it had been on a granite block by the gate. Obviously these things are important to me. I've probably only got 10-15 years left, maybe 20 if I'm lucky. So obviously whatever happens here, it won't happen, I'll be gone. But the thing of my report here is, I've been here 5 years, and I have observed that from the period I've been coming down here, not always to Penryn, but at different times, obviously bits of heritage are gradually disappearing, and nothing much has been done in the valley, although obviously Councillor May has put some points forward for the children and things like that. What amazes me is places like in France, Odern, which we're twinned with, that all their stuff is done in historical, you go there and it's all done. And it seems in Britain, for whatever reason, money and everything else, other stuff, it all gets pushed to one side. In Cornwall, your website shows all the people want to come here, they're coming down from everywhere, want to stay here. What was it? 1.5 million people came down last summer. And I couldn't understand why this hasn't, the heritage people, somebody, all the history there. Some of it's been cleaned by the students, some of the steps have been shown, but there's nothing else has been done. And obviously I didn't know it's in private ownership from there, because there was no signs of that to start with, apart from on the farm gate. But I realised, I'm in a country, but I thought this farm land hasn't been touched in considerable time, maybe 20 years. And somebody told me the other day that Walker bought this land off the original farmer because he thought he was going to farm it, and he sold it to him, and of course he never farmed it. But that's that issue. But what I'm asking